Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 280, entitled Need Some Design Inspiration? Try Extendify's Pattern Collection. It was published on Thursday, the 26th of May, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley and I'll be joined by Chris Lubkert from Extendify in a few moments, but before then, a few bits of housekeeping. The Page Builder Summit is back. It's version 4.0 and it's all happening between the 20th and the 24th of June 2022. Why not get the calendar out right now and put that in? 20th to the 24th of June 2022. 5 days of WordPress Page Builder stuff. Lots and lots of different presentations from lots and lots of different speakers. Some of it very technical, talking about how to achieve different things in particular page builders. Some of it more design related, but there's sure to be something for everybody. So go to pagebuildersummit.com. That's pagebuildersummit.com and join our waitlist. And if you do that, we'll keep you updated as and when we have news as the event approaches. It's not that far away now. The event would love some new sponsors, and if you are working for a company that would be interested in sponsoring such an event, well, we'd love to hear from you as well. You can head over to pagebuildersummit.com/sponsors to find out more. Once more, pagebuildersummit.com/sponsors. If you enjoy the WP Builds podcast, and I certainly hope that you do, feel free to subscribe, wpbuilds.com/subscribe, and we will keep you updated. Also, go out and share it on your podcast player. Give us a rating, give us a review, or you could just tweet us at WP Builds. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with The Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. That's go.me/WP Builds. And we do thank GoDaddy for their support and helping us to put on the WP Builds podcast. Speaking of which, what have we got for you today? Well, we've got Chris Lubkert from Extendify. Now, Extendify is a suite of patterns that you can use to improve your designs. If you're using the block editor, well, even if you're not using the block editor, it may be that you struggle to come up with inspiration for designs. Well, they've got absolutely loads in store for you. There's a lot of people using it. There's a lot of fanfare about what it can do. And the really nice thing, which I didn't understand at the start, and as you'll learn, I learned as the episode went on, there is no tie-in. That means that if you uninstall Extendify and decide you just want to go on your own, everything should, with a few minor caveats, just keep going exactly as it was. So the whole no lock-in thing is quite a curious thing. Anyway, Chris is a lovely guest, and I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast today by Chris Lubkert. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nathan.
We have had many conversations actually over the last few weeks on various different podcasts and summits and all of that kind of stuff. But Chris is here today to talk about block patterns. So if you're interested in the future of WordPress via the block editor, this is going to be a nice conversation for you. If you're not interested in blocks and patterns via the block editor, well, pay attention, because I suspect this is going to be the future for a lot of us building WordPress websites. Just before we begin, Chris, it's a bit of a bland question, but it's the best way to start. Tell us about yourself. How come you're on a WordPress podcast? What's your journey with WordPress?
Yeah, so Chris Lubkert, I am a co-founder of Extendify. We're focused on improving the WordPress experience, making it easy for people to create their digital presence. And I started my WordPress journey at Automattic and that was my first deep dive into WordPress. At Automattic, I was doing corporate development, so that's acquisitions and investments, both in and around the WordPress space, required Tumblr and things like that. So that gave me a good perspective on the ecosystem overall, but also worked on some internal growth initiatives as well. And so that's where it really opened my eyes personally to how massive the ecosystem is and how great of an opportunity there is to for folks to use WordPress and be successful with their digital presence and do so in a way that's open and gives them all of the freedoms that we all know and love.
So we have Extendify now. If you are unfamiliar with Extendify, I suggest that you pause this podcast, go to extendify.com. It's as you'd imagine, EXTINDIFY.com. Go and have a little poke around and then maybe click play again.
EXTENDIFY.
Did I get that wrong? I apologize.
I think you put an extra I in there,
EXTENDIFY.com. Okay, thank you for the correction there. That's good. So extendify.com. I'm sure you can Google it and find it that way. But go and see what it is and then come back and listen to the podcast, because that's what we're going to get into. Chris, what on earth is a block pattern? Let's just begin there.
So I think we're all familiar, obviously, with the Gutenberg, the block editor. It enables people to create pages and experiences in the editor, in kind of a WYSIWYG type way, leveraging blocks, different components that they can use to build their site. And a block pattern is essentially a collection of those blocks that creates a part of a site. So we think about that. It could be a team pattern, that talks about your team and has some headshots and titles. It could be a pricing pattern that has a series of blocks that lay out your pricing that you offer as a business. It could be a hero section, or could be anything, any section of your site we think of as a pattern. It's a collection of blocks there. And then if you combine several patterns together into a full page, in our world, we refer to those as layouts, page layouts, kind of people describe them as well. But so you can kind of build up from the smallest component, which is a block, up to a pattern, up to a full page, and then finally a full site kit if you kind of combine multiple different pages together. So.
And the principle here is that you are able to take a design which is pre-configured by somebody. I mean, honestly, I can design nothing. I'm really dreadful. But I can just go in, use Extendify, and click on something, and immediately I get a row. I get a whole pre-designed row for something, like you said, a header or what have you. And it's a one-click solution, and then you go in and customize what's been brought into the page. Is that sort of sum it up?
Yeah, that's right. I would say from a design standpoint, there's the structure I would differentiate from the colors and the fonts and things like that. What the Extendify is a library of patterns and layouts that you can access in the editor and kind of click it and add it to your page very easily. But we are not imposing colors and fonts and things like that. It is theme responsive. We describe it as theme responsive. So regardless, whatever theme you're using, our patterns and layouts will adapt to those styles and fit within that kind of design system that you already have set up on your site. There are a variety of different ways in which you can lay blocks out to get kind of with each other to create pretty unique and interesting looking site components and patterns and things like that. But yeah, that's it. It's an important distinction, I guess. There are certainly times where people can find, hey, I like this pattern, I like this page, but if it has blue buttons instead of red buttons, and the font's a little bit different and the spacing's a little bit off, you're gonna end up with this Frankenstein-looking site, that like nothing's ever gonna feel like it all goes together. And so our goal in keeping that theme responsive is to ensure we have a cohesive site, as people use different patterns and customize it to to fit their needs.
Okay, so let's just drill down into that. So what you're saying is that you provide, if you like, the scaffolding, almost like the wireframe. You bring along the way it is designed. The paddings, the margin, the spacing. But if you are on theme A, which has got red buttons, then you get red buttons. And if you're on theme B, which has got blue buttons, you get blue buttons. And you can switch between those because Extendify doesn't bring along those design decisions. They're handled by the theme, and you stay out of that.
That's right. We're not locking into anything, and you'll see what it looks like. So we use live previews in the library. So you're not looking at just a scaffolding, or you're not looking at something that's just black and white and generic. You'll actually see exactly what it's going to look like on your page with your style and the kind of theme applied to that. So
okay, just curious, because I'm sure most people have dabbled with the block editor, even if that's just writing text and putting paragraphs in and block quotes and whatever else it might be. But the promise of the block editor, and I'm not entirely sure we've got there yet. The promise of the block editor was, to be able to design the site from the ground up and do everything. But I'm guessing that a tool like Extendify is here because it's not as straightforward for the end user without certain skills to put something beautiful and that just looks really finished and has got lots of wow about it. That's still a difficult thing to achieve in the block editor, hence Extendify, because you want to take that drama away from us, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think the block editor is more powerful than people oftentimes give it credit for. But it takes a fair amount of work to really learn and figure it all out. So if you wanted a new weekend hobby and you wanted to learn a new skill and invest time into how to build beautiful sites using the block editor, you could do that, and you could do everything that Extendify does all on your own. It's certainly possible. There's not anything that we're doing that no one else could learn how to do themselves. But it's interesting you described kind of the ability to use the block editor to build a site from the ground up. In a lot of ways, what we're solving is the blank canvas problem. Starting from a blank slate, how do we instead give someone a starting point, that's 90% of the way there, and then they just need to tweak and edit it and add their content or swap out a few images, and then they have something good to go. So how do we really kind of get over that first initial hump and kind of accelerate the time for people to get to this launch point and be successful?
Yeah, I guess so there's always going to be comparisons made between proprietary page builders, the likes of Elementor and what have you, and the block editor. And one of the things that I find really powerful about the block editor is that the settings that you get if you drag in an element or a module with Beaver Builder, you've got what you've got in that module. You've got the space to put the text, and you've got the space to upload an image. And if you're a developer, you can modify that. But if you're not a developer, whatever that module tells you you've got is what you've got. Whereas with the block editor, it's just a collection of blocks. And so if you don't want there to be an H1 in that location, you just delete it or move it down and move it left and move it right. And I think that's one of the great things about it, which is kind of not generally thought about, is that you can put any block inside of your patterns, right?
That's right. Yeah, we one very core premise of how we're building Extendify is to stay native to core as much as possible. So, we're not limiting any of the styling options you have or limiting what you can add to your page. What the end result is after you've used Extendify to kind of piece together some of those sections or using some of our layouts, it's all in the core editor itself. So anything you can do with the WordPress core editor, you can do with a page or a site you've built with Extendify. So kind of it's not locking you into any kind of system or set of kind of capabilities. It's infinitely extensible, essentially. So
okay, I think we should drill down into this bit a bit more, because this is interesting, and I think in many ways this is like the UVP for Extendify, because on the one hand you've got a lot of block, what shall I call them? Let's call them suites of blocks. So you've got the likes of this Cadence and Stackable and a bunch of others. They take a really different approach, don't they? They take the approach that they're going to concentrate on the block, and I know they've got templates and what have you, but they bring along their their bespoke blocks with their bespoke settings. So they might have, I don't know, a heading block, and it behaves in the way that they want their heading block to work. But you're saying that everything that you have in your templates and patterns is built up from the blocks that are on every single WordPress site.
That's right. Yep. We're sticking, this is the second element of sticking close to core. So the first is, not creating a separate editor, separate builder, as you talked about. And then the second is, even within the current editor, how do we leverage core blocks in interesting and unique ways, still to create compelling designs using those core blocks, but do it in a way that it has two benefits. One which you described, where you don't have one block over here that has these settings and these capabilities, and this one over here that has a different set of kind of customizing options. And next thing you know, you have 3 different image blocks all used in different places, and you have to kind of figure out what you can do with each one. It's kind of everything is used in core. And then the second is that you don't have to keep all of these things installed and updated and rely on someone to keep them supported. So if you've created a site using several different block collections, block suites as you called them, you have to make sure that all of those collections are kept up to date. Nothing is unsupported anymore, conflicts with the next version of WordPress, whatever it is. And so you can quickly find yourself in this position where it gets unwieldy. And so I think the promise of some of these things, if you picked one suite, one kind of collection, and just stuck with that and used that every time, and it suited your needs and you never needed anything else, that's probably an okay solution. Just realizing, though, that you're locked into that collection. You always have to have that live and active on that site, or else things are going to really not work out well if you ever try to change away from that. So
yeah, I think that is the message that Extendify need to beat the gong about, is that it's just built on top of core blocks, and so you can put anything into any of your patterns and templates. So it's you can drag in the designs that you've got, and from there it's just a starting point. You can delete things, add things, put anything in, and I think that is a really different thing. And I'm not sure that most people have grasped that about it. A few people that I've talked to about Extendify clearly didn't get the point that it was no, it's just core blocks. What? Oh, right, okay. Because they're so used to the page builder analogy, where you've got the modules and the modules behave in certain ways, and if it doesn't look right with that module, you have to find another module, as opposed to your solution where you just sort of drag things around and put things in and what have you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. We need to do a better job of getting that message out there in a lot of ways, but this idea of staying close to core, it really does come with, a meaningful set of benefits, and it's important kind of approach that we take as a company that is not easy, actually, right? I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it may be easier for us to have created our own set of modules and only use that and create a very controlled environment. But then we may not be all that different than Wix, right? I mean, Wix is a very controlled environment as well. They kind of control every element of it. You can't extend it, if you will, pun intended there, but our intention here was to combine the experience you get with some of these closed platforms, but enabling people to still get all the benefits of a truly open platform and not being locked into anything.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. You've got a team. Do you just want to give us a little bit of background on the team? How many people you're at the moment? It's not necessarily something that anybody needs to know, but it gives some idea of the level of commitment that you've got and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have about 10 people that we work with across, with both core team members and some folks we work with on a contract basis as well. And we are, I'll kind of put a little plug in here, we're actively looking to grow the team. So if you are someone out there who's passionate about the future of WordPress and Gutenberg and the block editor specifically, and are interested in helping to improve the experience for hundreds of millions of WordPress users out there, we would love to talk. So we're kind of always looking to add great, passionate people to the team, but feel really good about the group we have and the set of experiences across the team, and we're cruising along. So
yeah, okay, thank you. Normally we leave the pricing bit till the end, but I think the pricing piece fits in nicely here. Before we get into what you're going to actually see, do you just want to outline the sort of structure that you've got, the different models? Because there's free and then there's paid. Just give us an idea of what you get on free and how that works, and then what do we get when we go paid, and how does that work?
Yeah, so there is a free version, which is you can grab the Extendify plugin from the repository and you can see how it works with your theme and your setup. It's limited in terms of the number of imports, number of patterns you can add to your page each month. So each month you get 10 that you can use. So if that's good for you, you can just keep using the free version. We have a subscription to Extendify Pro that allows you unlimited usage in terms of the number of patterns, and also access to some more exclusive Pro premium patterns there as well. So that's how that's the model for the library and how people can use Extendify and check it out.
Okay, and with the Pro version, if you're on the monthly subscription and you're an agency, do you have a limit on the number of sites that it can be deployed on before you have to go to a different tier, or is it just unlimited on anything that you create with your subscription?
Yeah, so you can put Extendify on an unlimited number of sites, essentially, because the plugin itself is not what is kind of premium or paid. It's not a pro version of the plugin. So what we allow is it's on a per user basis, but like somebody who wants to use Extendify to build sites, that person can choose to use it on a single site, or there's an option for them to use it on an unlimited number of sites, and then they can kind of build as many sites as they wish with it.
Got it. Okay. So imagine that. Let's talk about from now on. Let's assume that I'm on the paid version and I'm allowed to access it unlimitedly. Okay. So I've installed the plugin. I've got my subscription bound to the plugin. I'm off to the races. How does it actually work? What do I do? What do I see in the user interface? And I know we're on a podcast. It's audio. It's hard, but let's give that a go. What are we actually interacting with?
Yeah, so you would interact with Extendify in the editor itself. So the page or the post editor. So if you are creating a page, you will then see a button at the top of the editor that opens up the Extendify library as a modal right in the editor itself, and you can filter the patterns and layouts based on the type of site you're creating, which will have copy and content, images, etc., that will match the type of site that's being created, whether it's a yoga studio or a restaurant or a plumber or whatever it is that you're building. And you can kind of then drill down even deeper to the type of pattern you're looking for, if there are certain design elements like a background image that you're looking for specifically, and then from there you just click the pattern you want to add to your site, and it pops it right in. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of how you
I think we've seen that all over the place, haven't we? The idea that there's a button at the top and it brings up some kind of modal, and you could search through things and filter things and click the button and in comes the row. Now you mentioned that there were layouts as well as patterns. We sort of just briefly touched that. Just tell us what the difference there is. Layouts feel as if it's a more whole page approach, whereas the patterns feel like they're possibly just rows that you would stack on top of each other.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So a pattern is a section of a page, and a layout is meant to be a full page. You can pick a layout, and then you can add another pattern to it. You can add to that page. There's nothing that locks you into just that set of patterns there, but it's exactly that. It's meant to be a full page there. So
now you mentioned that you've done things by sort of industry like plumbing and what have you. Do you have the same thing on the template side of things, but maybe it's more like, okay, here's a template for a contact page, here's a template for an about us page, or a landing page or something? Is it done more like that?
Yeah, that's right. So on the layouts or templates as you call them, those are, it's actually a similar set of categories in a lot of ways, because it's like I would like a team page or an about us page or whatever the purpose of the page is. And a lot of those things could also be sections, even just thinking about a single page website, might have these components. So you could either have a pattern that supports one of those elements, or a full page layout that really serves up that type of page that you'd want on your site. Just
struck me that a curious use of Extendify, and maybe this isn't what the intended purpose is, but it struck me that if you were on the free version and you had no intention of going to the paid version, you could in fact download a few and just see how people on your team have tackled the problem of making Gutenberg do what it was told and laying things out, because obviously you can see the things in the, I never remember what the list view, there we go. You can see the way that things are laid out in the list view, and presumably you can hop around and figure out, oh, that's done with a bit of padding over here and there's some margin there and what have you. So it's maybe not what you intend for people to do, but that's a possibility. It could be used as an educational tool.
Yeah, inspiration is how we think about it. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're curious about how things are done, feel free to poke around. You can also reach out to us. Like, we're happy to, I mean, really, like, anyone, I think, sharing the experience that we've had in kind of creating these and creating unique and beautiful designs using core elements is something, we're happy to do. And yeah, but you can use something, use any of the patterns or layouts, see how they've been built up. You could copy them to another site and tweak it and make it your own. It's kind of any of that's possible, because it's all just adding these core elements to your site, as we've talked about. So there's nothing really proprietary that prevents anyone from doing anything like that and experimenting and making it their own.
There was a post on the WP Tavern website. It was a while ago now. I think we're kind of going back 3 or 4 months, where Rich Tabor, who works with you, he talked about the fact that it's you've got patterns and layouts, and he said, to quote, "It's built completely with core blocks, infused with a clever utility design system." And I'm just going to ask you to explain what the clever utility design system is. In other words, is there something that we can't see, that there's some magic going on somewhere that means that we couldn't necessarily replicate it? Or is that just language for, we're good at CSS?
Well, it's not that you can't see it, but it may not be obvious to people unless they dug in a little bit deeper in how we're putting some of these things together. So with any of the styling options that Core provides, we lean on just the Core option set there. So we're never going to be overriding something with CSS that could otherwise have just been a setting, a text color, whatever it is, just pulling that in and then this goes back to being theme responsive and adapting to whatever theme you're using or global styles you've had set on that page. But there are some things that we wanted to do with our patterns that were not possible with kind of where Core is at the time.
Okay.
And I think this will change over time, frankly. But today we do use a utility class system that's based on Tailwind. So if you're kind of familiar with that,
got it.
You can use any of those options there to kind of add additional styling elements. We use it sparingly, but we do use it in some situations where it's just not possible to use the core set of tools that we have.
Right.
But it's not adding a new setting or something like that. It's just these utility classes that help to make the patterns do what we want them to do, essentially.
Yeah, so nothing obfuscated, just some things are outside of the boundaries of what the settings in the blocks can actually achieve at the moment. Okay, so that's good to know. So if you run across something and you're scratching your head, maybe go and look at the Extendify documentation and search for Tailwind CSS and see if that can help you out. You just raised an interesting...
You can even see it just in the advanced, if you just open the advanced panel.
Right at the bottom.
Block settings, you'll see what's there. So it's
okay. Even easier. Forget what I just said. Just look in the advanced panel at the bottom. Yeah, it's lots easier. You mentioned, and I don't think we did drill down on that, but just to hammer the point home, right? If you bring in a pattern, apart from the bits that you've dropped into the advanced section, every setting that you see is a core block setting. You haven't brought any new settings along for the ride. So everything in the right-hand side, the menu on the right where you can do padding and margin and colors and all of that, that's what core has got. I'm right with that, yeah?
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think that's... we do that for several reasons. Like, one, we want to make sure that we're pulling in the styling elements from the rest of the site and doing so consistently in a way that makes these patterns all work well together. It also means that anything you're used to doing in core WordPress in the block editor, or even if you don't know how to do it, if you look it up, like go look at the WordPress documentation and figure out how do I kind of do XYZ with the image pattern, then you can just do that with the Extendify, the blocks that we have in the Extendify pattern. So you don't need to learn a new system basically in order to customize and change it after the fact.
Now, I have been using Gutenberg largely for text and been dabbling more with the sort of styling options and layouts and what have you more recently. And because I haven't been doing it all that long, I'm not that familiar with what the evolution has been like over the last 2 to 3 years. The question really is, have you run into problems where layouts that you had yesterday, WordPress core updates, some aspect of the block is changed or modified or altered, and you've had to go back to the drawing board and tweak things a little bit? Has it been very stable for you, or is that something you always have to keep looking out for?
No, we have to keep up with that for sure. The pace, I mean, it's really driven by the pace of development for Gutenberg. I mean, the way where the project is now versus where it was 2 years ago or even late last year, is quite different. And so it's very exciting. It's exciting to be a part of and helping to contribute to as well. Like, our team participates in Five for the Future. And so we enjoy, kind of moving fast and continue to evolve the experience. And as Gutenberg continues to get better and the editor, kind of WordPress overall, continues to get better, that only helps us as it helps many others in the space generally. So that's all very exciting, but it does mean that we need to, keep testing and ensuring that, there are no breaking changes. It's not as much of an issue with the patterns themselves. Sometimes, we'll update patterns just to take advantage of new functionality. I'll say, oh, great, that now this is an option that's now available. Let's, kind of create something more interesting. But even I mentioned the library itself, it uses the live preview component. So this is the ability for you to see before you've added to your page what the pattern layout's going to look like. It would be a lot easier for us just to put a screenshot there. It wouldn't be as compelling for the user or helpful because you wouldn't know exactly what it's going to look like. But that's an example of something that's evolved quite a bit with WordPress itself and has gotten just better and better. But it does change. So we need to keep up with those changes and ensure that kind of our experience just continues to work really nicely with that and is complementary to that. So
if let's just take a block pattern. I've got some kind of hero section block. Well, it doesn't matter. Whatever pattern I've just thrown into the page. The moment I drop it into the page, I'm guessing that from that moment on, it's standalone. It lives in that page, and it's not kind of in any way calling back to Extendify to say,
that's right,
how should I look? What's going on over here? So in other words, from that moment, the moment it's on the page, it can't, well, I guess it could break if something dramatically different happened with the core block, but presumably the designs that you've already fiddled with and created and downloaded and modified, they're insulated to a great extent. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. I don't know.
No, you're right about that. Yeah, and that's a huge benefit of using core blocks as well, because that means, when WordPress 6.0 comes out, there's no way that the image block is going to now break for everyone who's used it in the previous 9 versions of WordPress, right? I mean, that would be totally against the mantra of WordPress, right? Yeah. So some of the functionality and kind of APIs that product companies like Extendify use, those may change and evolve. We need to keep up on that. But in terms of what people have already used to create and publish their sites, like I'm not saying there will never be a breaking change there or something that will change, but I would assume it would be an accident and patched and fixed. But, like, that is the benefit of using core blocks, is that those are tested very thoroughly before every release to ensure that they continue to function for all the people who've used them to date. So yeah, you're right. We're not touching anything after it's added to the page.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. That it just occurs to me that would be very important. And yeah, good to get that answer. Thank you. Yeah. There's obviously
one thought is the idea that we're not touching anything afterwards means you're also not locked into continuing to pay for Extendify. We want people to, we want to become an indispensable tool that people use for every site they create and every time they want to add something to their site. They go to Extendify because it's the easiest and most effective way for them to do that. But if somebody, for whatever reason, decides, I've used this premium version for a little while, it's been helpful, but now I don't need it anymore, or I want to go use something else, nothing on your site changes. You don't need to keep paying us for updates to ensure things are secure and supported. You're not locked into continuing to pay in that way. So we're kind of giving ourselves the hard job, but the important job, making sure we're just a great tool that people want to keep paying for, not have to.
That is a really curious outcome of everything that you've built. I hadn't pieced those bits together, but that makes perfect sense. So with a lot of other things, the security side kind of keeps you coming back for the support, doesn't it? Because you know that there's a bunch of code there that could at some point be out of date. Possibly somebody discovers a vulnerability in there. But because the block, or the pattern rather, once downloaded, is divorced from Extendify, it's just WordPress now.
Yeah, just WordPress.
Yeah, that's a fascinating. I hadn't made that connection. That's ingenious. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Whether you're using a page builder or some of these block collections, a lot of times, if you stop paying for them, the site that you've created will stay the same for now, right? But then if there are security updates that are required, like you said, those are kind of, you need to keep paying, subscribing in order to get those. Or even if, WordPress 6.0 comes out and something now conflicts, and instead of getting that update, you would have to either stick with what you have and stick on a previous version or pay to get that update. Yeah, that's what we talk about when we say kind of you're not locked into Extendify and kind of continuing to use the solution. It just keeps working.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel that that message hasn't quite permeated yet. So hopefully people listening to this will, because I'm now beginning to understand that as in real time as we speak, I'm getting more of an understanding of what you meant by no lock-in. I hadn't quite understood it in that way. So yeah, that's well explained. Thank you. I get that far more now. That's brilliant.
I feel like people will have to potentially experience the negative effects of it firsthand before they really understand it, right? You install a bunch of different block collections and all these different tools, and one of them then conflicts and you don't have the update. You're just you'll experience, unfortunately, I think people will experience this for themselves. And so hopefully it's not that big of an issue, but then, they kind of understand the implications of some of these decisions that they make. So,
obviously the block editor is changing all the time. There's new blocks being added and additional functionality, maybe additional settings in blocks that have existed for quite some time. Presumably you're keeping a close eye on that, and if a new exciting block drops into core, I'm thinking, well, let's go for the navigation block or something like that.
Yeah.
You begin to take those on board as well, and they get added in, and in the future we'll have navigation patterns and things like that as well.
Yeah, you will absolutely be seeing, so the navigation block is both, it in itself is an interesting tool, but it's really made powerful by full site editing. So as you think about kind of customizing the header and the footer of the site and using patterns for that, today, and this actually goes with a lot of, whether it's like the header and the footer, but also like the patterns in the pages themselves, you have some options that come with your theme. So you pick a theme and you can pick a header for it. Our goal, a lot of what we're doing with Extendify is decoupling the kind of patterns that you get with the theme that you pick. So instead of just having the couple options that come with your theme, we can enable people to access a wide variety of different patterns for their header, their footer, and keep those then if they ever choose to change their theme. So we actually work with some theme authors to enhance their offering, essentially, right? Where like they provide some set of unique set of patterns, but then those users also get access to the very large library of Extendify patterns. So they have both the kind of unique elements, but also ones that they can use to create anything they wish, really, with Extendify. So
yeah, well, it's nice to know that it's not like there's a tidal wave of new blocks dropping into core every couple of weeks, but there are ones, and it's nice to know that you're giving those some thought, especially around full site editing, because that seems to be where the excitement's going to be for the next 12 months, 24 months, and
because that's still new.
And it's actually quite difficult to get your brain around it, I think, at this point. It's the old menu system for WordPress is just burned into my brain now,
right.
So anything which isn't that is kind of oh really, but I'm getting there. I'm trying and I'm playing, and we'll see how we go. In terms of the design library, so whether that's patterns or the layouts, does it just grow forever? Does it just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Or do you take the decision sometimes, you know what, we've had that one around for a little while, it's not quite as interesting or cutting edge as it once was? In other words, do you purge things once in a while just to keep it fresh?
Yeah, we want it to be a curated experience where people are, we're providing things that are compelling, and kind of meet the needs of whatever someone is looking to create. So sometimes that means we do update things, kind of replace a pattern with a better version of it, essentially. And I don't think it keeps growing forever, but we do still have we still do have quite a bit of opportunity to create components that meet a wide variety and kind of different needs out there. So I think one of the biggest elements there is a lot of our patterns and layouts today are very design focused. It's kind of the elements that you see on the page, but we have an opportunity to add additional functionality in there that really aligns with jobs to be done for that site. So if you want to, you're a yoga studio and you want to accept bookings on your site, where we're heading in the future is kind of adding the ability to kind of have a pattern that already has a booking solution kind of pre-integrated with it, works well with it, so that it kind of fits with the goal of whatever the site is looking to accomplish. So we'll see that continue to evolve.
With that in mind, do you have an intention to partner? And I don't mean partner up in the sense that you'd have, you'd literally be talking to the developers, but to use, let's take the example of Gravity Forms. Everybody's heard of that. Everybody knows what it looks like and what have you. To put block patterns together where there's a gravity form in it, and we can see that, or the booking, the events calendar, or something like that. Yeah.
You're spot on. We are very, we don't want to build everything ourselves, for sure, right? I mean, we've taken that approach both in terms of seeing the benefits of leveraging core, as we've talked about quite extensively so far, but the same goes for additional functionality that is already well served by other solutions in the space. So we are very partner friendly and partner focused, and so we, our goal is not to kind of build our own form solution and our own form block in that case. It's to give people the flexibility to use whatever they're already comfortable with, but also partner with the leading solutions out there that already have fantastic products and combine that with Extendify to kind of make a solution that's easy for people to use and meets their needs. So
here's a question, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this. Can you put patterns inside of patterns?
I mean, yes is the short answer.
What I was thinking there was, imagine that you had a pattern and it was for some, I don't know, image left, form right, but you had different, you displayed, let's say fluent forms. That looked different to the way that gravity forms would look. Could you drop a pattern for the correct form? That was probably a terrible example, but do you understand what I mean? It might be nice to put different patterns inside of other patterns based around what these third parties are doing.
Yeah, patterns are essentially just collections of blocks laid out in a specific way, but there's nothing that prevents you from breaking them apart, essentially. And saying, I actually want to split this over here and add something in the middle, or swap out these different blocks, or whatever it is. So you have, ultimate freedom, essentially, in what you want to do, just as you would creating a site from scratch. So there's nothing that locks you into keeping something together, or not be able to swap something out. So
I'm imagining I've just sort of strayed into unsafe water there. So it's my ability to overcomplicate even the most straightforward of tasks.
I think some of these conceptual things. Sometimes people think about, okay, this is a group that I have to keep together. And I can't do it. But really, as I mentioned, there's an unbelievable amount of flexibility you have. So being aware of that and making sure people understand that is certainly important. So that's a good question.
So Extendify, the way I see it is, I'm consuming the stuff from Extendify. So I get a subscription. I examine the library of patterns and layouts, and I consume them, download them to my site, and we're off to the races. Is there anything in a roadmap? Maybe are you hoping in the future to allow me to modify things and then store them somewhere else. I know that's
Yep.
probably not the remit. Maybe it is, but I'm just wondering if there's some sort of cloud aspect in the future where I can put my own things once I've modified them and adjusted them to my liking.
Yeah, there are two exciting things I think we think about as it relates to the cloud kind of opportunity, or where the product evolves. One is likely really targeting the needs of developers, designers building sites, doing client work, giving them the ability to save and customize different patterns and layouts so that they can kind of use that effectively within their workflow. So that's kind of one element, and I don't know if that's what you were maybe thinking about when you were asking about the
a
cloud.
little bit of that. Yeah.
We do. Yeah, that certainly is in the plans, is to kind of make it a better solution that fits within the workflows of those folks, and kind of on our path to becoming that indispensable tool that I described. So that's kind of one element. The other is right now you can browse the library and kind of filter through that, but we are also working on kind of more of a guided onboarding experience where people can answer a series of questions or give input in terms of what they're looking for, and essentially on the fly we create something bespoke to their needs. And so that's really exciting as well, because we can kind of, it's not just you pick from what's available, it's you tell us what you want and click a button, and in a matter of seconds we've created something dynamically for you that feels very unique to what you're looking for. So that's the other thing that's kind of coming up in the future that we're excited about.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I genuinely like the idea of that. So I think I've got through all the bits and pieces that I wanted to ask. So I'm just going to throw the open question to you. Is there anything about Extendify that I've missed, or anything that you feel I missed the target on? Just hit us now.
No, I don't think so. I mean, in terms of the product and the experience, I think the two things that we are very interested in right now, I've mentioned both of those, but I'll just reiterate it again, which is growing the team. So if you're kind of interested or curious in terms of what we're doing, we'd love to talk to you and kind of see if there's a good fit there. And then also from the partner standpoint, if you are somebody who sees the value in improving the experience, kind of WordPress experience for your customers, like there are pretty exciting ways that we could work together, and we'd love to talk with anyone who's interested in that as well. So
great.
That's where we're focused.
Yeah, thank you. And if that were the case and they wanted to go straight to the source, in other words, we know that the URL is extendify.com, so there's probably ways of reaching out to you there, but specifically you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Chris at extendify.com, CHRIS at extendify.com, or you can find me, Chris Lupkert, on Twitter as well. So those are the two best ways. I'm also in like WordPress Slack and post out of Slack, so that's also an option if that's more comfortable too.
Like me, you have one of those surnames that you can get it on Twitter. It's available.
It is easy. Yeah,
there's not too many Lubkerts or Wrigleys,
No.
and the combination of first name and unusual surname just works beautifully. Chris, thank you so much for talking to us today. You've opened my eyes. There's definitely a few things that I misunderstood that I now get, so I appreciate that. I hope that the project succeeds, and we keep downloading patterns long into the future.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, there you go. I hope that you enjoyed that episode with Chris Lubkert, talking all about block patterns and Extendify. It was really interesting for me. As you probably heard, there was a lot that I needed to learn about that product, in particular about the lock-in. If you've got anything you would like to comment about that, please head over to wpbuilds.com, search for episode number 280 and leave us a comment there. Alternatively, join our Facebook group, 3,000 plus very polite WordPressers over at wpbuilds.com/Facebook. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more. Head to go.me/WP Builds. That's go.me/WP Builds. And we thank GoDaddy Pro for their support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, that's it for this week, except one quick final reminder. Page Builder Summit coming up soon, 20th to the 24th of June 2022. Find out more, pagebuildersummit.com. Hopefully we'll see you for the podcast next week, every Thursday, 2 p.m. UK time it comes out, or This Week in WordPress, our live show. You can find out more at wpbuilds.com. Okay, I'm going to fade in some cheesy music, and I'm going to say, I hope you're well, I hope you stay safe. Bye-bye for now.